and perception, 7 to 9% of the AP exam. So sensation tends to be about messages without meaning. Perception is the interpretation, and consciousness we will skip because that's the old unit. All right, let's take a look at sensation. Big ideas. The first thing of sensation is, well, first of all, sensation is like your eyes, your ears, it's a system. And sensations are messages. They don't have meaning, they're messages, and we'll explain. First big idea, thresholds. Okay. This is the idea, do you see it? Do you hear it? That's the idea of threshold. A term you want to be aware of is the absolute threshold. That's what psychologists say when you perceive something 50% of the time. This is kind of like when you're at the doctor, they test your hearing and they say, point to the ear. Do you hear the beep? At some point, you're guessing, you're getting around 50%. That is the absolute threshold. Subliminal is less than 50%. You perceive it, but you're not aware of it. Second thing related to thresholds is differences. This is, do you notice a change in, for example, the sound? When you turn the radio on, is it louder? So threshold, you can hear it. Differences is a change, and the term to be aware of is JND. That's the just noticeable difference. For example, you hear the radio gets louder. There's a couple of laws. There's Fechner's law and Weber's law. Weber's law is the one they usually ask about more in the exam, and that says you notice change as a percentage. What this means is if you held a piece of paper in your hand and put another piece of paper in your hand, you'd notice the difference as a percent. But if you had a heavy weight in your hand and you put a paper in your hand, you would not notice the difference. So Weber's law is based on a proportion. Another term to be aware of is called signal detection theory. And this is just the idea that this all has to deal with hearing things or seeing things. If you're ready for something, you'll perceive it more easily. Like I hear crumpling paper easily, so that's signal detection theory. Okay, next thing you want to be aware of is pathway of vision. What does this mean? The outside world has to get to your brain. And that's what sensation is. It's the outside world getting to your brain, and that's what your senses do, your eyes, your ears. Let's start with vision. Vision is, for the sensation chapter, vision is the most important one. It's the most significant one. First thing just to be aware of, this is what you can see. This is all the energy in the universe. So you can see how limited our sense system is, and we have these colors that we can see. All right, let's follow the pathway of the eye. How do you see this candle? You see it in your brain. So your eye is going to help you get this to your brain. So the cornea is the hard part, iris is the colored part, the pupil is here. The pupil is the opening and the lens is here. The lens is going to take this thing and flip it upside down. See here, it's upside down, and put it in your retina. Now, your retina is really important. Lots of stuff happens in the retina. The fovea is the central point, and let's go into the retina now. All right, you flipped it upside down. Now, in the retina, you're going to have all kinds of stuff. You're going to have rods and cones. Rods and cones are in the retina. When the candle hits your eye, these are cells. They're going to fire. The cones are going to fire. The rods are going to fire. Rods are black and white. Cones are color. Memory trick. So colors and black and white is going to now fire from the retina toward the brain. I know this is confusing, but here we go. So, and that's called transduction. Really important point. Physical energy is the outside world, like light. Neurons firing is transduction. Transduction occurs in the retina. All right, we keep going. It goes from rods and cones to the bipolar cells to the ganglion cells to what they call the optic nerve. And here's your eye. These ganglion cells form this thick cable called the optic nerve. It's so thick it forms a blind spot. Then that goes to the thalamus, eyes to the thalamus, and then to the visual cortex. And voila, if you see a snake, now it's in your brain. All right, I know I went fast, but that's the pathway. You want to know that really well. All right, next thing, even deeper, in the brain, there's something called feature detectors. And feature detectors are in your cortex, in your brain, and just to keep it simple, they can see lines. So if you read or speak English, you're used to, like, you can see the letter T. So a feature detector would be a cell in the brain that could see, for example, a vertical line. And then you put a horizontal line on it, that would be a feature detector, okay? All right, then on processing, just when you see things, we make it seem easy, but you really parallel process. Meaning, we'll talk more about this. When you see, quote, a bird, you see the form, you see it move, you see its depth, and you see its color, and all that's going on in your brain. All right, let's talk about color vision for a second. Color vision is based on the trichromatic theory. That's the idea that you have three basic colors, and that's how you see color. Colorblind people probably have only two of those colors. A colorblind person could not read this, but because they couldn't get one of the colors. Just be aware, in art class, when you mix the colors together, you get blach. But this is more like theater light mixing. So just be aware, you're going to be three colors are going to do it. And the second, so trichromatic theory is there's three colors. Opponent process theory is the second part of this. And opponent process theory argues that you really see colors due to pairs, and they work together and they work against each other, and the colors are red, green, Christmas, blue, yellow, UCLA. And so, for example, when you see that flag, and this is kind of a fun thing called an after image, if you stared at that a long time and really stared at it and then went here, something weird would happen. That weird thing would be called an after image. So basically, opponent process theory is that color vision works in pairs of colors working against each other. The idea is if you're looking at green right now, it's pushing down the red. If you're looking at the yellow, it's pushing down the blue. So when I go here, the opposite would pop up. And that's the main thing. And I would also just be aware, hearing works the same way. You have outside sound, physical energy. It goes to your ear, and there's transduction in the ear, and then neurons will fire. And so hearing also has a pathway. The idea is the outside world is physical energy. The neurons are on the inside world. And just be really important, the cochlea. The cochlea is where transduction occurs. That is the key thing. Transduction is you transform physical energy into neurons, and that happens here, the cochlea transduction. Other senses to be aware of: pain. Pain goes on. Pain is part psychological, part physical. It's called gate control theory, and that's the idea that it's not all physical. If you are relaxed, pain will be less. If you are stressed, pain can increase. Beware, smell is a chemical sense. It doesn't go to the thalamus. It's just chemicals. And the term is olfaction. Rubber hand illusion is something where you can believe you're being touched with your mind. And the vestibular sense they like a lot. This is how you know where, and that video on YouTube can illustrate it, where your head is. And you know which way is up. If you didn't have your vestibular sense, you would have no sense of where your head is or balance. And it is in your inner ear. There are these canals, and they have sacs, vestibular sacs. And when you turn your head sideways, the sacs tell you you're turning your head sideways. All right, and that's a vestibular sense. All right, I think I'm going to stop on that one. That is sensation. We'll do perception next. I have to figure out how to turn this off.